thanks, Emer, for that. And the Minister, I'll be touching on a number of issues that he's raised in his own opening. Yeah, I'm conscious that the title of this particular session is Direction of Travel in terms of policy. And no matter what, in order to go forward, you kind of need to look backward as well. And it's at this time, as we're heading towards the fourth cycle plan and the end of the third, it's worth just reflecting on where we are now, how we've got here, and what we need to do to, if you like, accelerate the implementation, as the Minister has alluded to. So I'm going to look at the kind of policy challenges ahead and also the opportunities. So as Emer and the Minister have mentioned, where we're at the moment is we are at 54% surface water satisfactory condition, 91% in terms of groundwater. What we've seen is some net improvements in our waters over the last two cycles. We've also seen declines as well. So effectively, we haven't seen a net improvement. Indeed, we've seen some net declines, particularly in the coastal areas where we've seen a very worrying trend because of nitrogen losses to our estuaries, which we need to urgently address. However, in the second cycle, when we took the area of action approach, the more targeted approach, we saw a bucking of that trend. Where we took these targeted, focused approaches, we saw a net improvement. So what we need is more of that going forward. I mentioned I've been involved in this since the beginning, and it's interesting to look back now, the first cycle, the second cycle, and the third, which will end in 27. And you could say in the first cycle, we had multiple river basin plans. I think we had 6 in total. They were locally authority led, and there was a very strong input from consultants, which served us well. We got a lot of technical work done, but we didn't build that capacity within our state bodies. The second cycle then really was about taking a much more targeted approach, using better evidence, better scientific information, taking a risk-based approach. We also put a lot of effort to enhancing the governance structures. I'm not going to go into that in detail, but there's quite an elaborate governance structure there in place, and Forum Ishka was mentioned earlier, which provides advisory support to those governance structures, the Minister, the Water Policy Advisory Committee, etc. The third cycle is really about building on that, the second cycle, with a much more targeted approach, more evidence, tracking implementation, being transparent, engaging with various stakeholders in terms of the development of that plan. Forum Ishka, again, heavily involved in that process. And we've tried to reflect a place in the plan for everyone, all the different initiatives that are contributing towards water quality improvement, and trying to get some coherence between them. So the way I would sum this up is, over time, the 3 cycles, we've seen increased clarity in terms of what needs to be done, roles, responsibilities, etc. And this enables us then to, as has been mentioned earlier, put the right measures in the right place. And that's where we're focused now on the implementation. The Water Action Plan was launched in September of last year, and it underpins the government's commitment to fully implementing the Water Framework Directive. It recognised the need to accelerate both the identification and the implementation of the right measure in the right place, not just to restore those waters that have deteriorated, but to protect those from deterioration. Because as I said, we've seen a kind of a net no change scenario, because we've seen improvements, but then also disimprovements. So we need to kind of put a floor under that and make sure that all of our waters collectively show net improvement. I'm not going to go through this in detail because I'm conscious that a lot of these measures are going to be touched on in various presentations over today and tomorrow. But just very briefly, we have a focused approach with areas for action, 517. An awful lot of the country is covered by these. We've 7 sectoral action work plans, 46 catchment management plans being developed, led by LawPro. We have a new Farming for Water initiative called the Water EIP, 60 million, with capacity to engage with 15,000 farmers, of which you'll hear more. We've increased our efforts in terms of inspections of the Nitrates Action Programme. There's a new mitigation program to address barriers in rivers, making those rivers free-flowing, meeting both Water Framework Directive, but also nature restoration objectives under Article 9. Uisce Éireann continues to invest at an unprecedented rate, 2.3 billion alone being committed this year. And very importantly, and this came from recommendations from Inform Uisce, it was kind of pointed out we needed some sort of focal point within the department, what we call a program delivery office, to drive the implementation through the various institutions, agencies, etc., but also to track the implementation. So we have as close to real-time information as possible. If there's problems with making progress and achieving our targets, we take action there and then, etc. So that's getting up and running now at this point, but a really important initiative. The Programme Delivery Office, and it is a commitment in the Water Action Plan, that's it there, Action 6.3, but its intention is to oversee, coordinate the implementation of the programmes of measures, of which there are many, is about 157. Tracking and reporting on the implementation is critical to this. Accountability with various agencies assigned responsibility, and this will ultimately support the high ambition that is in the plan. The office is also facilitating communications. We've got in excess of 30 organisations involved in one way or the other in terms of implementation. So the flow of information, data, etc., is critical to underpinning the process. And the office is also involved in the development of the fourth action plan, which actually has got underway already early this year. So we've addressed the governance, and it will continue to evolve, there's no doubt about that. We have delivery programs in place, such as Uisce Éireann's investment program, the Farming for Water, the CAP strategic plan. You've got the barriers programs, etc. We have the basis now for targeting measures based on the best science, etc. And we will monitor and evaluate progress with that and take actions that we need to be. The point I'm trying to make here is that none of these on their own are going to deliver. They all have to work effectively together. And that's the real challenge in terms of the implementation piece. Effectiveness of measures, as I said, the implementation of the right measure in the right place is absolutely paramount to actually delivering net improvements. Of critical importance to that is data to establish the evidence base, to confirm whether measures are working, but also whether they're not working, and if so, why not, and what do we need to do to improve the situation. Critical to this is working together. There's a lot of effort going in across departments, agencies to put data sharing agreements in place to make sure that data flow is happening, and EPA can evaluate the measures, the actions against water quality trends as observed. The monitoring, the evaluation at various levels, at the national level, at the catchment water body, even field level, we have to have this data so we can track implementation and the effectiveness of the programs of measures. The Water Action Plan, the mission statement, states that to take action to protect, improve all Ireland's water bodies by implementing the right measure in the right place at the right time, with the objective of reaching as close to full compliance with the Water Framework by 2027 as possible, and closing any remaining gaps as quickly as possible thereafter, subject to the rules of the directive. And the Minister's pointed towards this really acute challenge. There are various challenges. One is the scaling up, and we have a lot of examples of projects, local initiatives that have worked really well, LIFE projects, the EIP initiative under the Department of Ag. The real challenge is scaling that up to make sure that we see net improvements right across the state. There are, of course, risks of ineffective implementation. For instance, the farming initiatives. We put the funding in place, we have the delivery mechanism in place, but there's still a lot of links in the chain that can go wrong. Are those measures following through in terms of recruitment of farmers? Are the measures being put in place in the right place, etc.? Are they effective? So there's a lot that can go wrong, and that's what we need to focus our attention on at both the national level and all the way down to local level. But I think even assuming we meet all our targets as set out in the plan, and EPA estimates very conservatively, if we're successful, we'll probably see an 8% to 16% improvement by the end of this cycle. That still leaves us a long way short of 100%. So there is a reality there which is being recognised both in Ireland but also across the EU. This is a slide that the European Commission presented last week after they've evaluated the river basin plans for the third cycle. It shows from top to bottom the status across European waters on average from the first cycle, second cycle, through to the beginning of the third cycle. And as you can see, compliance is the blue and green areas, which is high and good. There's been only minor improvements over that cycle, which shows this is a European-wide problem. It's stubborn. Despite all the efforts that are happening, we're not seeing that major shift in compliance by 27. And that's a challenge that we're all facing. If we look at how Ireland compares with this, and we look at the third cycle, the beginning of the third cycle, the situation for Ireland is we're actually, as the Minister mentioned earlier, the average is 39 for Europe. We're at 54%, which is a good starting point, but we're still not making traction. We're still not moving forward in a significant way. But it is a European-wide problem. The Commission have also assessed at a kind of a global level the river basin plans that they've evaluated so far. Under the heading of governance and horizontal issues, they pointed to issues of governance challenges. Now, these are Commission conclusions, and they're not my views, etc. It's an assessment of all the plans that they've looked at to date. So you've got governance challenges remaining in terms of strengthening coordination. This is complex, trying to get organisations working together, quite often with conflicting policies, etc. Does the implementation of the programmes and measures continue to be a challenge in terms of lack of funding, delays that have happened for various reasons, capacity to deliver administratively, but I'd even say operationally as well. You know, there's only so fast we can progress, even with all the resources in the world, etc., and that has to be taken into account. The Commission have also been critical of there being no long-term investment plans and no gap analysis in terms of how do you bridge that gap. The economic analysis has improved, but it's often unclear how this is used to inform the choice of cost recovery, pricing, and more generally the design and programs of measures. And this is a situation right across Europe. The transboundary issue, while we have north-south transboundary issues, really this relates to the European situation where you have very large catchments, in some cases crossing many borders. And then the digitalization of water data is still an area that needs to be improved on, and the use of more modern tools, etc., even into the area of AI and how that can help us identify appropriate and optimal measures. Interestingly, the Commission has set out, this is a graphic from the Commission in terms of areas of recommendations or clusters, and they relate very closely to the kind of points I've made myself here. There's that scaling up investment. There's tracking the pressures, the targeted measures, following the implementation of the measures and their effectiveness, enhancing resilience within the water environment. And as you'll see, and hopefully appreciate over the next 2 days, there's a lot of emphasis on nature-based solutions, which will, by their very nature, build resilience into water systems. There's the increased ambition and the recognition at European level, as we've also kind of reflected, in increasing the ambition and accelerating implementation. And the proper use of exemptions under Article 4 as well, while maintaining the ambition to use the mechanisms available to us to perhaps lengthen the implementation period. So this has led to the Commission to initiate what they're calling the structured dialogue approach, where they have started with the country-specific recommendations. They will look to have one-to-one structured dialogues over the next 18 months, starting in the second half of 25, running into 26, where the Commissioner, European Commissioner for Environment, will come over and engage at the highest possible political level. And what's anticipated is a process of technical discussions leading up to that engagement, agreements hopefully on areas of action, and a political endorsement both at European and national level in terms of actions to be taken. And this is recognising this is a European-wide issue. It's not something specific to Ireland. So there may well be initiatives at European level, but also at national level as well. So coming to the end, or close to the end, our objective, like pretty much all member states, and I've been involved in discussions with member states and the European Commission, we want to maintain the high level of ambition, good ecological status, high ecological status where it exists. But it is going to be it is challenging, despite all our best efforts, and we have made significant gains. There's a new task force and exemptions now being established to look at how can we maintain the ambition while using the exemptions provisions within the directive. We are now looking at a national WFD or environmental objectives group to be established probably over the next short few months. And there will be an opportunity, and we've started the process of the fourth cycle plan preparations. We will be engaging probably in October in probably a workshop of stakeholders looking at what should the focus be of the next river basin plan in what's called the Significant Water Management Issues consultation, which will be published at the end of this year. There are opportunities to be found, and I would point to the Cabinet Committee that the Minister mentioned earlier on water quality. I think that's a forum that we can use in a very constructive way. There's the National Land Use Review, which is in draft at the minute. The Nature Restoration Law, which is being referred to, and you will hear more about that. There's a lot of overlap with Water Framework Directive here. The development of an area, the whole thing of hydromorphology, I know it doesn't make it a lot to people, but it's the physical quality of the environment. We've got drainage activities, we've got barriers, etc. That's now been looked at in a very major way in terms of putting in place an enhanced consolidated legislative framework for managing those pressures on the physical condition of waters. And very importantly is the commitment in the new Infrastructure, Nature and Climate Fund, 3.15 billion, which is committed up to 2030. It opens next year in 26, and we will be availing of that to deliver a lot of the measures that I've mentioned. I mentioned the whole thing of exemptions, and there's an action in there. The department has agreed to arrange for the development and application of a methodology for screening and application of Article 4.5 exemptions for the next cycle, where justified in accordance with the strict criteria stipulated within the directive. And that's something that we need to start having a discussion on in a serious way, as all member states are doing so as well. As I say, we want to maintain the ambition. We're not giving up, but we need to be realistic about what we can deliver and how quickly we can deliver it. And with that in mind, just now looking forward, the public consultation on the development of the fourth cycle has started. The timetable and work programme for developing that plan was published in January this year and will close on 25th of July. We'll then start the next phase, which is the significant water management issues. What is the focus of the fourth action plan going to be? As I mentioned, we do anticipate a workshop, probably in October of this year, to have that discussion. We hope it'll be timed with the EPA's water quality report, which will act as a sort of a basis on which to have those discussions. But some very, very serious engagement needs to happen. And I recognise, as the Minister has called for, meaningful participation. We have to come to a collective view on how Ireland progresses. Thank you.